Hey everyone, and welcome to our network. This is the what I call the Magical Miracle Network. My name is Ruth Perkinson, and I'm so grateful all of you are here with us today. I have two of my favorite people on planet Earth here. Jackie Laura Jones and Cindy Lora-Renard are with all of us today on this network to talk about my favorite subject, which is A Course in Miracles. And so, guys, thank you so much for agreeing to do this another time.
Thank you
Yay!
for having us another time. It's always so enjoyable to talk to you and have our conversations, and so thank you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Thank you guys so much. And for those of you guys who don't know, we met each other many moons ago. It feels like, and yes, it's about I think 2017. You guys came to Richmond and did a great workshop. And since then, we've just stayed connected, and time to time we talk and we see each other, and just have a really lovely connection. I think that's the main thing. And so today, what we're going to do is something very simple, very organic that I want to do with you guys for about maybe 30 or 45 minutes. Is just talk a little bit about your backstory coming to A Course in Miracles, just a few nuggets here and there about how you found the course, and anything else that pops in. It's very, whatever you guys want to do. And then what I thought we could do is maybe read a passage or two from a section that you like, that you want to share or reflect on, that would be helpful for all of us watching. And then maybe at the end, as we close out, you can just give young students or new students or even older students some good golden nuggets we can take away that will help us in our practice of A Course in Miracles. So how does that sound?
Yay!
Perfect. Yes. Good ideas.
Great ideas. Yeah. So
So who
fun.
wants to go first? Jackie, Cindy? I'm good either way.
Sin,
I'm good
go
either way.
ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I will start. I love talking about my path with the course. I will try to do my very best to keep it brief. Okay, even though I could be dead by the time I'm done talking about it. But I'm gonna keep it brief.
So many details. Yeah.
Okay, no. Okay, in my early 20s, I started really opening up to psychic phenomena. I was having out-of-body experiences. I was having all these new experiences that told me that there was something beyond the body. And I already sensed that before that, but I was really, really having some experiences, mystical type experiences. And it just picked my interest even more. And I was reading lots of books, any book I could get my hands on that was metaphysical in nature. I was doing the law of attraction. I was reading Neil Donald Walsh. I was reading Celestine Prophecy. I mean, all those kinds of books that were really big in the 90s. Anyway, that got me rolling on the kind of spiritual buffet line, like a lot of people talk about. I always, my sister and I do share this part of the story. We would go to a local bookstore and go right to the metaphysical book section. And we would always see this big blue book, A Course in Miracles, sitting on the shelf. And we would just, we did this both individually and when we were together. Like, I'll speak for myself right now. I would go to the bookstore, take the course off the shelf. I would look at the first page or two, or that first few lines. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And I just was intrigued. I was so drawn in, but I didn't really know what that meant. As I was flickering through a little few more pages, I was reading and I'm like, this seems so complicated. I'm like, I'm not sure I understand this. I didn't, but I was so pulled to it every time. Okay. So I did this a dozen times. We'd go to the store, look through the book, but put it back on the shelf. One day I decided to buy it, just decided to buy it. Sat on my shelf for 2 years or whatever. Didn't even look at it. I just wanted to have it, I guess. And little did I know, fast forward several more years, my mother asked if she could borrow a copy of A Course in Miracles, because she knew I had it. She started attending study groups on the course, and she wanted to borrow my course book. I said, sure. And at her course group, she saw on the coffee table, the facilitator teaching that, or facilitating that group had The Disappearance of the Universe on the coffee table, my husband, Gary's book. And she was intrigued by that and brought it home and read that. It was all about the course, as we know, our course students know, who know Gary too. And she kept sharing with me all the lessons, the lessons of the course and things that were in Gary's books. And it just inspired me so much to want to start the workbook of the course. My mother was a big factor in me really feeling that inspiration to do it, especially when she was talking about how funny, the disappearance of the universe was, but yet it was a very powerful teaching. That combined with what she was sharing with me about what she was learning with the lessons of the course, I basically said, hey, can I have my course book back?
Yeah.
I'm going to start reading. I'm going to start studying this now. After, I started reading The Disappearance of the Universe. After I read that, then I really started doing the workbook of the course. So that's how I got into it. But I did have a spiritual buffet line, for a good 8 years, maybe before I actually started, before I understood that the course was my path. It was going to be my path.
Right.
And it was just undeniable. I was like, this is the answer. This is it for me. It answers every question I've ever had about anything. And makes sense given my experiences up to that point, all my mystical experiences. So that's in a nutshell how I came to it though. Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool. And, I think every book you named, I've read as well. That spiritual buffet line, I was reading them all too. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, they were
That's
big.
so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just today's Gary's birthday, as we all know. And so just wanted to share with you, this is his book, The Disappearance of the Universe. This is what she's talking about. This is, it really has changed my life. And, this book and the blue book, which I'll actually just show that one too while we're talking about it. This big blue book right
why
here
not?
is
Yeah.
really changed my life. I call it the Holy Grail. I just do, and
Yeah.
really has changed everything for me. So thank you so much to our elevated brother and to your
Yes.
husband and your brother-in-law, Jackie. So thank you.
Yeah. Happy
Yes.
birthday,
Thank
Happy
Gary.
birthday.
Happy birthday, Gary.
You guys are
Yes.
lucky I'll sing that at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would love that. Would love that. Would
That's
love
right.
that.
That's a really cool backstory, Cindy. And I think that's going to be helpful for people who are new to this channel to hear how you came to it. So thank you for that. So Jackie, we'll switch over to you and see what your
I'm up.
story.
Well, Sin and our stories are so parallel. There's so much that I went through that was it's almost verbatim what she said. I'll point out maybe some things that maybe were unique to my experience. I too was in the spiritual buffet line reading everything in the 90s. When I moved back out to California in the mid 90s and I lived with Sin, we lived together. We loved that time together. She will tell you, Sin, remember you're like, all I was doing was working and reading tons of books.
Journaling.
Journaling and working and reading and journaling and working and reading. It was so interesting. So she witnessed this. And she's right. We would go to Bookstar and pull off the big blue book. And what happened with me is when I would put the course back on the shelf because it was too much, I'm like, oh, I was like, what the heck is this? Next to it was a little book and it had a beautiful cover, looked like a Monet painting. Maybe it was a print of a Monet painting by Karen Casey, and it was 365 meditations on A Course in Miracles or something like that. And that was such a pretty book. I pulled that off the shelf and I bought that along with some Deepak Chopra books and Wayne Dyer books and the whole thing, right? 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And so that little book was the introduction to me of the ego and the Holy Spirit, two voices or whatever. And I had moved to Tennessee at the end of 99, beginning of 2000 to host a morning show there. And I brought that little book with me, and something totally resonated because I didn't call it that, but I was always aware of two like voices in my head, two parts to the mind. I wouldn't have used those terms at that time. And so it really resonated with me. And I went ahead and bought the course, and our stories come together again, where my mother brought the disappearance of the universe home. And she and I, as Sin and she and I had been having conversations. And I was always like, I just don't understand the world. Something's going on here. This can't be right. It can't be true. When I was younger, I was like, what's all this suffering? Why are people behaving that way? I was just observing them. And then I'm like, why am I behaving this way? Why did I do that? I was just like watching myself and people. I wouldn't have called it that again when I was younger, like, oh, I'm the observer. I mean, that's what I was doing. I didn't know that that was something that's kind of good to be doing or whatever, just watching your thoughts. So fast forward again, when I would have conversations with my mom, and when she brought home disappearance from the course group, she said, this is going to answer what you've been saying, clarifies about why the world is the way it is or whatever. I just remember her handing it to me. And then I read to you and I said, oh my God, yeah, we're dreaming here. It's a dream. That's why this is crazy. And even though I've been dabbling in the course, I didn't get that whole thing in. And once I got that, I said, oh my God, I'm getting a chill right now. I said, oh my gosh. Then I dove into Ken Wapnick deeply, deeply, deeply. And similar to Sin, I guess, started really doing the workbook lessons and stuff like that. So that's the short of it. And I just felt it resonated with me because so many things that it was talking about, I had experienced when I was younger, or doing those things or hearing different voices. Jesus was different for me, presenting different to me than the Jesus in the church. And it just was all this stuff. And so I said, yeah, it just felt natural to kind of just pursue it. So that's the kind of the short version.
Yeah. Wow, that's really amazing. It sounds like your mom was so instrumental.
Oh,
She was.
right? Sin?
She
Oh my
was.
God.
Oh
Yeah.
So
I would
shout
come
out.
home from work, which my work was at the time was really close to where she lived. And I would come
Oh,
have
yeah.
lunch with her in the middle of the
Beverly.
day.
Yes.
And I would pop over and she'd be doing the course and reading the course. And we'd talk about it over lunch, and this is before I started doing the workbook too. So it was just so in our, family, the three of us.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really like,
Yeah.
woo,
The three of us before
like a
anything
moth to a
else.
flame, like a moth to a
Yeah.
flame. We just, we're like, oh yeah, we're just meant to do it, I guess, together.
Yeah. Well, that's so lovely that she was sort of like, holding that lamp right in front of you guys. And exactly. And our moms, thank God for our moms to really sometimes get our attention.
Yeah. You're right. And what's so interesting is that there's never any pressure, any weirdness. Sin and I and my mom, we always would just have interesting conversations about so many things. And we all really came to it in an authentic way of just like saying, wow, this really resonates. It wasn't any like weird thing or like a, getting one another to do it or something like that. It just happened, kind of the three of us. And then we just would start sharing it and just kept just sharing it and going on with your normal lives. We all three had our separate lives and everything, but we're kind of just working at it and just watching our thoughts, and the rest goes on from there.
Absolutely. And we were talking about this word before we hit the record button. Cindy, I don't know if you heard us say this, but the word authentic and organic, authentic is so important. It just sounds like very natural how you guys came to it, and it just sort of started to build from there. It just got sort of bigger, and sort of develop and grow and develop and grow. And And that's kind of how it started. It's so interesting to hear your backstory. And I know I'm sure you've shared it many times before, but to hear it, again and again is so helpful. I just had this pop in my mind. I was going to ask you, while we're sort of in there, Cindy, you mentioned a few mystical experiences that you had. And Jackie, I feel like you've probably had a few of those as well. Is there one that you might want to share, if it's okay, that kind of really got your attention, maybe if you were younger or even as you were doing the course, anything that kind of like, oh my gosh, that was really cool, that might be helpful? Because oftentimes we sort of we don't think that we're going to have mystical experiences, or we don't talk about them too much, but I think it might be helpful maybe right here.
One pop right when you said that. I'll just go with the first thing that popped in my mind. First thing that popped in my mind was, I remember when Jackie and I were living together in a place called Park La Brea in LA. And that was the time I was having a lot of out-of-body experiences and things like that. But one particular time, if people who are listening have ever had an out-of-body experience, sometimes there can be a sinking sensation before you feel like you're sort of lifting out, and it feels like you're sinking back into the bed. Well, one particular night, this started to happen, but it felt a little different. It felt like how you might feel when you might be really letting go of the body, almost dying, like dying or transitioning. I started to sink back into my pillow. Now, not my body was sinking, because it wasn't obviously going through the bed. The astral form part of me started to feel that sensation of sinking back and back and back. And it felt like, in a sense, how one might feel if they were about to make their transition. And it was a little, I didn't know what to make of it. But all I know is I was in this space. It got super quiet. Not one sound, just super quiet. And then I heard the most authoritative but powerful voice, male voice. Could have been Yeshua's voice, Jesus's voice. It could have been a spirit guide. I don't know. But there was a male, authoritative, but loving voice said, "Let God into your heart. Let God into your heart." And I just sat there in this space. And I think at that point, I lifted out a bit part way. And I sort of lifted back into myself. And then I sort of opened my eyes, and it was so profound. And I felt really, then at that moment, I think is one of the moments when I really felt, oh, I'm not alone. There's spirit all around us, there's watching over us, guiding us, encouraging us, inspiring us. I mean, that's the Holy Spirit. But this time it took the form of this powerful male voice. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget it. Yeah.
That is really super interesting that you were sinking down and like, okay, what's happening, right?
I wasn't quite sure because it felt different than anything I've ever felt before. Like I was almost losing myself, like the ego part of the self, or I was just losing myself in this space of total silence and blackness. It was all black, not in a negative way, black. It was just like, there wasn't color. It was just black. Right. And then, but that voice, I'll never forget it. So gentle, but firm. Let God into your heart.
Oh,
I remember really that. I remember you telling me.
Yeah, I wrote it down. I used to keep a journal in the 90s.
Yes.
I'd write down all my and then I had several other brief, just out of body experiences where I did actually lift all the way out. I traveled a little bit out my window, things like that. So I knew that there was more than, obviously, more than this physical wasn't our reality. I mean, the spirit was our reality, because I felt more free than any other time I've ever felt when I was in spirit form.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so helpful, because I think oftentimes when we share these experiences like this, it gives people like a little bit of like, okay, if that happens to me, I'll know I'm okay, and that there's something just greater happening. And as we are on our spiritual journey. So very helpful. Thank you for sharing that wisdom there. And that's so beautiful. You heard that, let God into your heart. It's so beautiful. What a
Mhm.
beautiful phrase to hear.
Yeah, really comforting.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I want to hear more, but Jackie, we'll transition.
Yeah.
We'll
Well,
come up to you. We'll come back to Cindy. But yeah, do you have one that you might
oh,
want to share?
yes. I mean, so many, like Sin said. I mean, I started hearing voices in my mind of people who would pass that would want to give me messages to give to people. I've astral traveled too, hovering over in the ceiling of a restaurant I used to work at, just like floating there, just astral traveling. But the one thing that came to mind happened, and I can't even remember the year, but it was around 2005 or 2006. And the reason I know that is because what happened, I started to read DU and started to really practice the course in 2004. And it was not long after that that I was looking out my front window, and we have a really pretty street. And sometimes I just look out the front window onto the street, and I'm looking. There's a big kind of a palm tree right in front of the window. And so I was looking out, and I don't even really know how to put it into words, but everything just stopped. Everything was completely still. My eyes were still looking out the window, but I wasn't really focused on anything. And in that moment, I was like, this is like our natural state. There's no fear. There was nothing happening. There was no thought. There was nothing. And I just sat there. And as soon as in my mind said, oh, I want to stay in that, I came back in to it. And it just came into my mind about that revelation, what they say about revelation, about God communicating to you. You can't put it into words because there's no words. There's nothing going on. There's no fear. You absolutely know in that moment, there's no fear. There's nothing happening but your joy, your oneness. Now, I've never had that since, but I remember that that's the state, and I've never been the same after that because I can remember it. I've never been exactly, I've had fleeting moments that are close, many fleeting moments that are close, but the memory of it is enough to say, that's where we really are. That's all the love, there's no people. I mean, there's no bodies. It's nothing like that. It's just awareness. And when I think about it now, I always feel the wording would be everybody, you're loved. Remember that you're loved. Remember that you're connected. Just let that memory that you're connected and be of service here come through you in all your roles. We can be ego free in all our roles here. When we're in right-mindedness, which means we're not in the muck of guilt and I've done this and who's judging me and la 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 and look what they're doing and attack and whatever, which we'll go into something I want to read if we get time for it. But I just want people to know they're loved, to be yourself, be authentic. Oh, but we're not bodies. It's not a. We know that. We know that's not our real identity. But what happens is a reflection of that is letting go and being authentic here. Authenticity means you're just not resisting anything that you're watching your dream, you're watching to not be authentic and just flow along, right? Is making the ego real by trying to not be in the moment or resist something that's going on in your life. And so I always want people to be open, to be honest. Often the personal self is transformed first, the self that we believe we are. starts to become more loving, more, how else do we know? How else do we have a gauge, right? So simultaneously, as we're becoming more forgiving and not judging and going, wait a minute, this doesn't bother me, and in our right-mindedness, we understand, wow, where we really are and what's really going on. And that's how we can be ego-free in all of our roles here. So the course isn't about behavior because there's nothing out there but your projection. But I want to do well here. I want to do good. I want to be of service. You can't not be of service if you just listen to your right-minded teacher and don't judge what's right in front of you and just be true, you know?
Oh, oh my gosh. I'm just listening to all of this is so helpful because I'll just calibrate this with you all. Doesn't it feel like, or to me, it feels like that it's so encouraging, like to have these moments, these mystical experiences, just it feels so
Sure.
encouraging. And then okay, that was so beautiful. And now I can keep going. Does that resonate?
Mm-hmm. I think it's
Yes.
so helpful when anyone shares something that's beyond this world of time and space, because it reminds us that this isn't our true home, that this isn't our real identity. I think it's so helpful, yeah, when people
Right.
share it, so we can remember who we really are.
Yeah.
Helps us just take us to keep taking us to that next level, next level, next level.
Great
Yeah,
point. And
Yeah.
everybody's experience will be different.
yeah.
So you don't have to have the same experiences. And I have clients that have said for you, well, I don't have any mystical experiences. Well, the biggest mystical experience you can possibly have is remember you're loved, you're connected to your source, and just let that direct your day, let that direct your functioning. And all these other things are nice and fun and they happen and it's okay, but things happen differently for different people and sometimes similarly. But just remember that your path is your own, everyone, you
Yeah.
know, it'll be just right for you.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I thank you for saying that. It's so lovely. Well, this feels like I love you guys so much. I just really feel the love, being in this present memory, being in the still point. I just thought about
Mhm.
T.S. Eliot, and he wrote this beautiful poem called The Four Quartets. And he says in there, at the still point, there is the dance, and so I always think of dancing as joyful. And when
Yes.
time stands still, there's this beautiful dance, and we're just sort of dancing with God, dancing with Jesus, dancing with the Holy Spirit, and singing, and just feels so lovely. So this feels like a good point. If we have a few more minutes, I'll check the time, but if you want to look at a passage maybe that you want to reflect on that might be helpful for our listeners, that you were guided to look at today, I'd love to try that for a couple of minutes.
Sure. I have one that I'd like to read from. It's chapter 12, section 2, The Way to Remember God. It's
Mm,
powerful, such a great
nice.
section. And it's
Yeah.
paragraph 5, and it's not too long of a paragraph. I'll just read it and comment. Jesus is saying, let us not save nightmares, for they are not fitting offerings for Christ, and so they are not fit gifts for you. Take off the covers and look at what you are afraid of. Only the anticipation will frighten you, for the reality of nothingness cannot be frightening. Let us not delay this, for your dream of hatred will not leave you without help, and help is here. Learn to be quiet in the midst of turmoil, for quietness is the end of strife, and this is the journey to peace. Look straight at every image that rises to delay you, for the goal is inevitable because it is eternal. The goal of love is but your right, and it belongs to you despite your dreams.
Beautiful.
I love that because there's not anyone that walks this world that doesn't have fear to some degree, right? So, or else it wouldn't appear to be here. So this is really all about just looking at the ego, the nightmare we made up, and just look. And when he's saying looking, there's several places in the course he reminds us he doesn't mean to analyze. He just says notice, but notice it with me sitting beside you, me as your teacher, which really means you're above the battleground, as he says, which also means you're above duality. You start to move into that pure non-dualistic state with Jesus by your side, so you can see things from a different point of view. And the line in this paragraph that's always stuck with me that I really want to reinforce is when he says, learn to be quiet in the midst of turmoil, because it's right, it goes along with that line, be still and know I am God. When you are still, and I've experienced the effects of this myself, just doing your best to empty your mind of everything you've been taught, everything you think is true or false, good or bad, all the duality, dualistic thinking. When you practice letting that go and emptying yourself, just doing your best to go downward and inward, as he says, to try to reach your real thoughts, the thoughts you think with God, the pure thoughts, the innocent, because you're innocent. This can be reached with continuous practice. And when you are still, you are being reborn. It's like that's what it means to be reborn. You're remembering your pureness as Christ. So it's really, really, I think, so important to reinforce that practice of allowing time throughout the day to practice being still. It could be one time a day, it could be 2, 3, 4 times a day, but taking some moments and doing your best to reach that quiet center. And then if something comes up, look, our thoughts, our mind appears to be split between the ego and the Holy Spirit. And there's going to be a mixed bag of thoughts coming through the mind. There'll be a mixed bag of like negative thoughts, judgments, but then there could be some, happy thoughts over here, but it's all like, it's all happening all over the place, right? But when you are just still, he says, imagine each thought coming through your mind as like a procession going by. It's just, you're just watching each thought go by. Then, there's another one. As you're just seeing it just kind of go by. But he's there with you, holding your hand as you're looking at it all, watching, observing from another place. So that's the main comment. I know we need to be a little bit brief, but just wanted to reinforce that passage and a little bit about that.
Oh, I love that, just that procession of your thoughts just going by, right?
Yeah, just kind of like you're just watching. Oh yeah, but you're not like attached to it. You're observing the observer, like a neutral observer.
Yes, that's so helpful. And when I'm taking copious notes as you guys are talking, because I don't know if I've already said this, but I'll just say it again, that there is, when you guys are talking, there is, for me personally, there is an up-leveling in my understanding. And so personally, as you guys are talking and unpacking it, in a sense, I'm like, I'm taking all these notes because it's, writing aids in memory for me. I have to just write it all down. And I know when I go back to it, it's another reinforcement. And I think you said something that was really interesting, continuous practice.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like I'm just going to be really honest. I'm doing this for a little while, and I feel like I see students who come in and they kind of fall away, or they'll try a little bit, and but I think it's a good message to even say is like, hey, it was just sort of, not with force, but just sort of keep at it lovingly, and as best you can, and don't give up. I guess that would be another message, I guess.
Yeah, perfect, beautiful. You're right, and we can be gentle and kind with ourselves as doesn't have to be forced upon us. Absolutely.
No.
Yeah.
That's so lovely. And that's chapter 12. What section was that again?
Section 2, paragraph 5 is the paragraph I read in that section. But the whole section, the way to remember God, is so many gems in there.
It's a lot of gems. And I'll just say to everybody that before we got on the call, we picked Archangel Gabriel, which is number 12. So you picked chapter 12.
Oh yeah, and that happened very organically. I didn't even mean to pick chapter 12. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. So we'll sort of shift over to you, Jackie. You have a passage you'd like to share?
Yeah, sure. Beautiful, Sin. Beautiful choice. Beautiful sharing your comments about that. There's so many, and I'll tell you what, my husband Mark, like he constantly says like Jackie Joy, or we'll wake up or something and he'll be like Jackie Joy, because he just feels I'm joyful. And I opened up the book literally. I had a bookmark in the course book, and I was like, oh, I wonder what I bookmarked, because sometimes it's in there for quite a while. Anyway, I'll just really quickly just show you how just marked up, and I mean it's just anyway. So I just opened to where this bookmark was, and it was in the manual for teachers, section 5, joy. And I was just
Wow.
thinking about like talking about joy, and Mark would tell you it's just something he does. Husbands and wives, they just have funny things that they do, and he'll be like Jackie Joy. And I just wanted to read this section about joy, and comment about it. You'll see why. Kind of fits into what Sin was saying about being quiet and gentleness. So this is in the manual for teachers, section 5, and this is in the development of trust, but it's number 4. What are the characteristics of God's teachers? Obviously, there's trust and honesty and all that, which we're talking about, honesty and authenticity. But one of the characteristics is joy. And it says, joy is the inevitable result of gentleness. Gentleness means that fear is now impossible. And what could come to interfere with joy? And remember, this is not joy in the world, externally looking out. Obviously, we don't see joy in a dualistic world. We see some reflections of joy, and obviously the reflections of hate in the ego thought system. This is the inner joy. This is why this is so powerful. The open hands of gentleness are always filled. The gentle have no pain. Why? Because they're listening to the right-minded teacher, and guilt is not involved. And what gives us pain and suffering is the guilt we feel unconsciously in our mind, right? Guilt and fear. The gentle have no pain. They cannot suffer. Why would they not be joyous? They are sure they are beloved and must be safe. Joy goes with gentleness as surely as grief attends attack. God's teachers trust in him, and they are sure his teacher goes before them, making sure no harm can come to them. They hold his gifts and follow in his way because God's voice directs them in all things. Joy is their song of thanks, and Christ looks down on them and thanks as well. His need of them is just as great as theirs of him, capital H. How joyous it is to share the purpose of salvation. The reason I love that so much is being authentic and honest and gentle means you're not resisting anything, which goes along with Cindy's great point of you watching the thoughts go by. Sometimes the body's angry, sometimes the body's happy, anxious, depressed, elated, and you want to be normal in those states, but there's still a part of you that's watching. And the joy comes from when you remember your will as God's will, and you remember you can wake up from this dream and that you're really safe at home. We don't experience that here yet, but reflections of that can be that we remember that connection. We feel that inner joy no matter what is going on externally. And that way we can remind other minds in the dream. This is silently, right? It's not walking up and saying, oh, you're dreaming. It puts people in tremendous fear when they're not in that mindset. They don't have to be in that mindset because there's no one out there, let's remember, but our projection. So this inner joy is just something that you can share with all minds because you're one with them. Just remembering that gives me peace.
Yeah.
There's no attack. The gentleness means we're listening to the right-minded teacher. Doesn't mean that we don't watch the body suffering and have no guilt about your physical ailments and everything. When we're ready, we can remember that the physical ailments and everything are in my mind. Boy, this is tough. I've been going through this for this and this and this. And don't judge yourself. Judging it gives it a power it doesn't have. But we also want to address things on the level of form in a normal way as a reflection of being loving to the personal self, which awakens and transforms into the spirit self. And so if you guys just remember your inner joy, have no guilt about that. It doesn't mean you're laughing at things that are not joyful in the world. You're remembering that the world is in your mind and that you're waking up from a dream. There is a world, right? That's joyful. How else can you find joy in a joyless place except by recognizing you're not here? It's an advanced statement to make. And so you have to believe in the premise that we are safe in God. God did not create this mess. A separate split off part of our mind, right? Did. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because I just love the word joy. I love it. I think it gets misinterpreted sometimes when you're nothing wrong with being joyful about things in the world. That's normal. But the Course is always talking about your mind. It's an inner joy. It's remembering who you are, who you really are, and who everyone else is. That's joyful, right?
Absolutely. I love that. Just this spirit joy, right? The joy in the spirit, really identifying with our spirit and being in that zone of spirit. And that just brings such,
Yes.
and even I just feel even saying that word right now, just like my heart chakra is like vibrating. It just feels so lovely. Just having that feeling of spirit. And I think you mentioned to me recently, just popped in my head about just do everything with the Holy Spirit, do everything with spirit, drink your water with spirit, go outside for a walk with spirit, just kind of be in that zone
Have
of
it in
really
your
trying
mind.
to consistently identifying with spirit. And that, I always tend to, like, I see that we're in this dream and I try to pull back just a little bit, like, okay, there it is. I'm just going to I'm gonna have a wider angle on my lens.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of and I go, okay, yeah. Then I remember that I'm dreaming. And you guys have really been helpful in helping me with that, is like pulling back the lens a little bit and really understanding that you are dreaming in this world. And so anyway, so thank you so much for that. It's beautiful. Okay, we're coming to the close. I know you've got a session in a few minutes, Jackie. How are we doing with time? Can you guys look at your
What time is it? I don't even know.
1:50 our time,
Yeah.
4:50 your time.
Okay, 1:50. Okay, so we have just a couple of minutes. And so I thought, as we're closing out today, so just so joyful, just my spirit is rising. If there's a golden nugget that you might want to share with either new students, middle of the road students, old students, something that really kind of pops in now as we're talking with spirit that might be truly helpful for those people who are out there looking, that you can just say, hey, just a golden nugget. I know one thing that comes up for me sometimes is people get confused about levels. That might be something you can share if you like. But anyway, I'll just pass it over to you, Cindy. If there's something just like generally you'd like to share that might be helpful for course students, whatever level, whatever their path is and where they are.
Yeah. Well, one thing I think is really important to remember as if you are a student of A Course in Miracles is to remember that this is not about being perfect in regards to behavior. That's impossible. No one's perfect. And I think we can be really hard on ourselves when we feel like we've made mistakes, or the guilt comes up, or why did I do that? We start beating ourselves up. The shoulds come out. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have said that. All we want to do is look with, again, the word gentleness keeps coming up, in patience and kindness with yourself as you do the course, as you practice undoing the ego through forgiveness, knowing that you're going to make mistakes. In other words, just assume, look, I'm not perfect here and I don't have to be. That's not what the course is about. It's about allowing the Holy Spirit to help us be the correction for us for our mistakes. that we make. And when I say mistakes, I don't mean, oh, I made a left turn on this particular road. I don't mean about the world. I mean mistakes as in the mind, a mistaken choice for the ego. As your teacher, that would be like, oh, I just made a mistake. The ego is my teacher in this moment. And I got worked up and now I'm holding a grievance or I'm feeling a judgment. That would be what the Course calls just a mistake, not a sin, just a mistake that calls for correction. And at any given moment, remember the Holy Spirit, Jesus, same thing, is just a thought away in your mind and you can choose it. You're a mind, not body, which means you have the power always to decide which teacher that you want to look at anything with. And remember that we don't have to worry about outcomes. Even of our forgiveness. If we're practicing forgiveness, I hear so many course students beat themselves up because they say, I'm practicing forgiveness, I must be doing something wrong because nothing changed. But they're wanting the outside picture to change. So my encouragement is to practice really letting go of results and outcomes of what you're offering, the love you're offering. That means, forgiveness is love's reflection in this world. So when you're forgiving, if you're truly forgiving, the outcome won't matter to you. Meaning you don't have to physically see results because the results are taking place at the level of the mind that we can't see. And the Holy Spirit's in charge of that. So trust, we can trust that everything is being taken care of. We're just being asked to do our part, just our part in it. And if you just keep practicing over time and just, with gentleness and kindness and patience with yourself, I assure you that something is happening and you don't have to see it physically in order to receive the benefit of it. So just stick with it. Try not to give up because you don't see a physical result.
Oh, I think that's extremely helpful for everyone watching, is that just to all that advice you just gave right there is super, super helpful. So thank you for that. I love what you said. I'm not going to recap it there because I think it speaks for itself. But Jackie, we'll switch over to you for just a couple of minutes. Any last golden nuggets you'd like to give out there that might be helpful?
Yes. Please enjoy yourselves when enjoyment is called for. Please be authentic. Your path is your own. You have your connection. You and the Holy Spirit, you and Jesus, you and God, you and whoever you're practicing with, right? Course in Miracles is a great guide. Different spiritual teachings are great guides. Don't beat yourself up. Remember that your path is unique to you. Find what's helpful along the way. Teachers, people, things you read, right? But I guess back to what Cindy said too, this theme of gentleness, which is the gentleness and joy too that I was reading about. If you knew how much you were loved and who walks beside you all the time, fear would be impossible. Doesn't mean we're not going to be fearful here, but just remember that. Just say, oh my gosh, I'm fearful because I have all these expectations on myself, on others, and whatever. Okay, that's okay. Why do I have the expectations? Oh my God, I'm in fear that I'm not going to be loved. I'm in fear that I'm going to make a mistake at work. I'm going to make mistakes in my relationship. I'm going to say something that should, right? On and on and on and on. There's no guilt in that's having those thoughts, but just to recognize, you know what? I can change the patterns of my thought. How do I do that? Changing my internal teacher. What's my internal teacher going to remind me? Remember, you're loved. You're dreaming here, right? And so let's choose again. But so-and-so's doing it this and that, and look how they're far ahead, and they, la, 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 la. Your path is your own.
I love it. Your path is your own. Well, I love it. Well, you guys are amazing teachers. Again, you do really up level the teaching. That is I think just a very, very important note to make here. with you guys coming on to this network. And this is our network. This is not mine. It's something I'm trying to share with anybody and everyone who might be curious about the message, which is just, it's love and forgiveness. Love God, love your neighbor, forgive, and that's going to really, and forgive in the course's way, which is the radical way, which we know as course is really is the way, because what you thought your brother has done to you has not, or sister has not occurred, and that's a great teaching right there that he really gets to us there in the workbook more toward the middle of the summer. So I'm so grateful, deeply grateful for my sisters today. Thank you for sharing your backstory. Thank you for sharing the piece of the course that you were guided to share with us. And thank you for these golden nuggets here at the end. It's so helpful. I know everybody watching this, whenever they watch it, are going to get something out of it. You can hit replay and watch it again and again. And I just also want to say before we end today, yes, happy birthday to beautiful Gary Renard. Yes, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Happy
birthday, dear
Gary,
my baby.
happy
birthday
birthday
to you.
And I just want to, those of you guys watching, this book has changed my life. And Gary Renard and you guys have changed my life as well. And these, Jackie and Cindy have their own work that's incredible. Highly recommend you reach out to them, get on their newsletter, and find their work, because it's absolutely a game changer. Disappearance is a game changer, and the Holy Grail Course in Miracles, my opinion, is the biggest game changer of all.
Yeah.
So God bless both of you. Thank you. Give me some patience here as I find the stop button.
Oh, we
Yeah,
love you, Ruth.
We love you.
We
Yeah.
love you.
And well, hopefully we'll have you on in July, August timeframe. I hope that's good. We can do it again.
Yep.
And you guys stay out of jail tonight as you celebrate.
Oh gosh.
Oh, no
I don't
fun.
know. I don't know if I can, but we'll see.
Oh, thanks for everything you're doing, Ruth. Thanks for
Absolutely.
Yeah.
your
Thank you so
contribution.
much.
Thanks for having us on. It's so fun to talk about things. So
Yeah.
we love
Yeah.
you.
We love.
Bye,
I love you.
everyone.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.